Hello, everybody, and welcome to this morning's class. Again, we are continuing on Zoom directly because of the problems on Facebook Live in relation to the connection. So I hope that yesterday's class was very clear, and I hope that the connection was good. And fingers crossed, exactly the same today. The connection hopefully will be good and you can understand the class better, because it's very frustrating when the connection is bad. So that's the key, and the most important thing is that the class is clear and that the connection is clear as well. So the plan today will be very similar compared to the other days, and it's possible during the class we might have more people joining, and that's perfect as well, but possibly not as well. So the plan will be very similar compared to the other days, as I said, and I'll just share the screen now and you can see the content here and the plan. So on the left, I'm going to show you the material. And the structure will be very similar. So we have an introduction document. We will continue with maybe a list of phrasal verbs, because I think they are probably the most important part of the class. I think the phrasal verbs are the key part of English. And that's my plan to continue with that section. So I just see, I'm trying to make it bigger again. So I think I have the same problem with the Zoom, which is a pity. I'm going to try this. Maybe this will help as well. No. Oh, okay, perfect. That was lucky. Very fortunate. Yes, so this is the plan, and I will continue exactly the same as before. So this document on the left, most of you are probably familiar with this document. It's the introduction to English, in my opinion, and most schools, most teachers have this structure. And I think it's almost the same, more or less, for everybody, but it's just necessary if you want to be familiar with the structure of this class. And I separate the section into 3 different areas. For example, the first area is use of English. For me, that's the key area and maybe the most important area. We have accents, different accents and different dialects. So that's very important. We have a list of phrasal verbs, which are very unique and very particular to English. It's a combination of a verb and a preposition. And that's very, very important, because the significance of the word can change completely, as you probably know. Also, idioms are like expressions that we use frequently as well. And they are a big part of English also. So that's the focus really of my class. Mainly, principally, it's dedicated to the area of use of English. Conversation is important, of course, and pronunciation is important. In the morning, at 9 o'clock, you can see here we have some speaking classes, and they are just a structured class in relation to people practicing speaking about different topics, and maybe just some advice and some corrections. But it's available at 9 o'clock in the mornings, and there is a WhatsApp group you can connect to and participate and book your place if you want. The free classes now will continue at this time. That's the plan. And there are specific webinars every day at 4 o'clock. And today is Thursday. So the specific webinar today is dedicated to the advanced exams, and that is the plan, and that is the schedule for today. So if you are interested in attending the webinar dedicated to the advanced exams, you can contact me to book your place. So that's the schedule, that's the plan. And as I said, the second part of the text here are tenses. So we have lots of different tenses in English, as some of you, of course, are familiar, but it's always important to refresh and just to remember very, very quickly the differences of the tenses. There are some very important structures, for example, the simple, present simple, past simple, and future simple. The past simple, we have a lot of irregular verbs. So this is the tricky and the difficult part, because the past simple has a lot of irregular verbs, and that's very, very difficult to remember all the irregular verbs. That's really tricky. The second possibility is the continuous. We have the present continuous, we have the past continuous, and the future continuous. I am talking, I was talking, I will be talking. That's the idea of the continuous. The next idea is the perfect. We have the present perfect and the past perfect. The construction of the present perfect is the subject, auxiliary verb to have, and the participle of the verb as well. So I have eaten my breakfast is the present perfect, and the past perfect is I had eaten my breakfast. So there's a very important difference between the present perfect and the past perfect, and the future perfect is possible as well. So it's very important that you are familiar with all the different tenses in relation to the perfect. Okay, so that's the simple, continuous, and the perfect. The next idea is the infinitive. So the infinitive is basically the preposition to plus the verb to go, to eat, to have. That's the infinitive. And during the class, I mentioned frequently the concept of the infinitive. So it's necessary that you are clear, that you are familiar with the idea of the infinitive, because there are some particular rules in relation to the infinitive, and that is very, very important. Also, the conditionals. We have a big area in English called the conditionals, the 0, first, second, third mixed conditionals, and they're very frequent and they're very important. In the book, it's a little heavy with the rules. There are some very strict rules in the book, but in reality, they are more flexible in conversation, and basically it's connected to if and the different tenses. Okay, so the conditionals are very important and they are a nice part of English. So in the future, I will explain more in relation to the conditionals, but during the class, I try to identify the key vocabulary and the key parts of the conditional as well. And the final structure that's probably very interesting and very frequent is the active and the passive. So the active is a typical structure. I drink coffee. That's the active, subject, verb, and object. So to create the passive, we change the position of the two, and we say the coffee, we introduce an extra verb to be, is, because the original sentence is the present. Drunk is the participle of the original verb, by me. And it's a little tricky if you are not familiar with this structure, but if you are familiar, it's very important that you try to use it, and you probably will identify it with other people. Okay, great. The next section is grammar. So again, these are the important terms. These are the key terms in relation to grammar that are necessary for you to be aware of and also to refresh. So for example, a noun, a lot of things are nouns: person, place, or thing. For example, hand, head, jacket. So many things, all things are nouns, okay? And every noun, we have an article. We have two possible articles. We have a and the. So house, for example, a house, but the house is specific. So you need to be clear with the difference between a and the. Okay, so that's the article. Also, as you know, we have the concept of countable and uncountable in relation to the noun. So is it possible to count the noun, or is it impossible to count? And this is important in relation to how much and how many. So how much is related to uncountable, how much time, how much energy, how much food, how much money, and how many is related to countable, how many pens, how many books, how many televisions, how many people. That's very important. If you have a doubt, the structure a lot or a lot of is flexible for the two. So that's very important to remember. Also, adjectives. So the position of the adjective is before the noun, and the function of the adjective is to describe the noun better. For example, house, big house. So the adjective is very important to describe the noun, and that's also key. We have another section, the comparative and the superlative. And this is very important when we compare things in relation to adjectives. So he is tall, but the other boy is taller than this boy, and the other boy is the tallest boy. So you need to be clear of that area of the comparative and the superlative. Very interesting and very important. The adverb, the function of the adverb is to describe the verb better. Okay, and the position of the adverb is after the verb. So drink is the verb, drink quickly, talk slowly, run rapidly. Normally, the adverb ends in ly, and you can see some examples here. So the adverb is very important, and it's key that you understand the function of the adverb. Modal verbs are also very particular and very important for English. We have a list of maybe typical modal verbs: can, could, may, might, shall, should, ought to, must, and they are used in different situations. For example, can is for ability and for permission. Could, may, and might are for possibilities and options. Shall is the question will. It's a bit formal. Should and ought to are for recommendation and advice. So for different situations, we use these particular verbs. And must and have to are for situations of obligation. You have no choice. You must collect the children. You must do the exercise. It's an obligation and you have no choice. They're a key and they're a very big part of English. Prepositions are also very, very fundamental in relation to English. So the preposition is a very little word and very small word, but we use them all the time in relation to position, direction, and movement. So we have maybe 150 prepositions, and they are really, really key. Also, in relation to phrasal verbs, to construct the phrasal verb, we use a verb combined with a preposition, and that makes a big difference and a big significance. It changes the significance in the phrasal verb. So prepositions are key, and they're very, very important. The next section is very interesting. Basically, the difference between my house, your house, his house, masculine, her house, feminine, in possession, adjective. So this give the house to me, I give the house to him, masculine, I give the house to her, feminine. Okay, so that's very, very important and a key part of English. Also, the difference between this, that, these, and those is important. The difference between another, other, the other, and the others is very important. Creating the questions is a big part of English, and hopefully I can help in the future. Suffixes and prefixes for me are a big area and a big tip for you to focus on the suffixes and the prefixes. This really helps to understand the form of the word, and you recognize better the structure of English if you are familiar with the suffixes and prefixes. Okay, conjunctions and linkers are very important as well. We have some simple linkers, but we also have some more advanced and some more formal linkers and conjunctions, and that's very important that you use them appropriately and correctly. And that's it. So that's basically the introduction I want to explain before my class. It's the same most days. It's like a little warm-up exercise before we begin. And also for specific vocabulary, if you want to improve your specific vocabulary, the best way to do this is to read. You need to read regularly. You need to read different sources, different books, different magazines, different newspapers. Also listening and speaking and writing is very important. So there's 4 or 5 areas of English, but to increase your vocabulary, probably reading is definitely the best way and the best method to do this. Okay, exam preparation. So today at 4 o'clock, we have the webinar, another class at 4 o'clock for the advanced exam. And every different days, we have different webinars dedicated to the exams. The Cambridge, we have the first certificate, advanced and proficiency, and the IELTS exam is popular as well. So that's the typical structure of the class. Now I want to continue with the list of phrasal verbs. So this list is difficult. This list is very important at the same time. And you can see there are 20 pages from this document. And yesterday we stopped at the verb to settle. And the significance of the verb to settle is related to calm. So remember, for the children, if the children are crazy, the children are hyper, you need the children to settle. And the significance is to calm. The same with the water in the ocean. If the ocean is crazy, we want the ocean to be calm because you want to cross the ocean or the sea. So you needed to settle. So very, very good. And we had a lot of possible combinations with prepositions with settle. An example, settle up is to complete your bill or to pay your bill. Okay. The next verb is to show. So obviously show is a very, very useful verb. It's very typical. For example, muestrar, I think something like mostrar in Espanol, show your hand, show your information. So it's very typical and it's regular. Show, showed, shown, but the participle is different and just an interesting structure in relation to English. But we have a few expressions. So to show your true colors is an expression to really show your true personality. So maybe the person appears very sympathetic, the person appears very nice, the person speaks very well and speaks very polite, but the character is maybe very different. So when you see the real character, the person is showing their true colors. So there's lots of possible combinations with the verb to show, but today we will focus on the prepositions, okay, with the phrasal verbs. So number 1 is very typical, and the significance is, well, the structure is to show up, and basically this means to appear, Okay, so the significance or the translation is to appear, a synonym, and it's very typical at a party. You organize the party and you invite 20 people, but in the end, finally, only 3 people turn up or show up, which is the same. So turn up and show up. Literally, that's the explanation, but the significance is that they appear or that they arrive to the party. So the example is only 3 people showed up to the party, and the significance is only 3 people arrived or 3 people appeared. Okay, as I said, there is another significance, another phrasal verb with the same significance. So only 3 people turned up at the party, and that is exactly the same, arrived or appeared. Okay, so very, very interesting example of phrasal verbs and a very good instruction, a very good example to show the difficulty of phrasal verbs. So that's to show up. There is another possibility to show another person up is different, and it's like a competition. So me and my friend, and it's my friend's party. So it's the most important, he is the most important person at the party, but I arrived to the party in a limousine. I arrived to the party with beautiful clothes. I arrived to the party with lots of people. So I attract a lot of attention. I attract more attention than my friend. So I show my friend up, and the significance is little like to embarrass the other person. Okay. So that is a very, very typical structure to show somebody up. For example, I am the English teacher, but my friend has better English than me. So my friend shows me up. So he embarrasses me because his English is better than me, which is probably the reality. To show up, to turn up, to show another person up is very important. To show out is literal. So there's no difficult second significance here. It's very literal. So it's at the party and you are the host. Okay, the host is the person who organizes the party, and the host accompanies this person out of the party. So to show somebody out of the party is to accompany them out. It's typical when your family visit you, and after they visit, you show them out. Okay, and the significance is that you show them the way to leave the house. So that's very typical as well. That's show up, show out, show down doesn't exist. Show over doesn't exist. We also have a show, which is typical in the performance for the theater. So when you go to the theater, you want to visit the show, you want to watch the show. So a show is like una obra in Espanol. Una obra, it's like a performance or a show, and that's very important. Also, there is an adjective, very showy, and this is typical in the furniture or the decoration. So the room is very showy, and the significance is it's maybe demasiado, it's too much, like excessive. So that's a possibility. It's very showy, so it's maybe excessive with the decoration. Okay, very interesting. Now we have another one, to show off, which is very, very famous, very, very common, a little tricky to understand. The best explanation is similar to embarrass. Okay, but for example, I have a new watch. This is my watch, and I'm very happy with my watch, for example. Maybe it's very expensive, maybe it's very important, and I like to show everybody my watch. So I show off my watch. That's the significance, that I really show everybody, and it's maybe excessive, and people don't like me because I show my watch off. But it's the same with the car. You can show your car off, but it's a little negative. So there is a noun. A show off is a person who behaves this way. So if there's a person who constantly tells everybody they are fantastic, they tell everybody the great news or the great products or the great things they have, that's a person who shows off. Very typical in sport. So the football player shows off. He's impressing, but excessively. Okay, so maybe to impress excessively, I think, is the translation. And I just think we have a chat, so hopefully the connection is okay. Damare, perfecto. Good morning, everybody. So I hope the connection is still okay, fingers crossed. And that's the last phrasal verb, to show off, is really to impress excessively. Okay, so a show off is a person who behaves this way. And here is the explanation. A show off is to show everybody with a lot of pride. So pride is orgulloso in Espanol. So sorry, pride is the noun and the adjective is proud. Okay, so that's very, very important, the difference between pride and proud. So very, very important. And here it's to show off. And we have a verb as well, to pride yourself on your mathematics, or to pride yourself on your home. That means you are really, really proud of your home. You are proud of something, okay? So that's an interesting structure. Here, we have a very good verb to boast, which is exactly the same to show off. So to show off is the same as to boast. And I'll just show you the translation in other languages because it's very, very interesting. And I think we have the dictionary here. So in other languages, the verb to boast, you can see in English, in Arabic, Bulgarian, Chinese, Croatian, Czech, Dutch, French, German, Hebrew, Hindi, Bulgarian, Italian, etc. And Spanish, jactarse, and Portuguese, alardear. I don't know, but that's what they say. So to boast is maybe a little negative when somebody tells everybody the good news, and that's the same as to show off. Okay, to show up is what I said, to embarrass somebody or to maybe make them feel inferior, and to show up is to arrive, not necessarily with previous notice, but it just means to appear or to arrive. And I think that is the list, the typical list in relation to the verb to show. Okay, and as I said, there's one or two expressions that we have in relation to show. Maybe in the cars, you have a showroom. So the showroom in relation to the cars is the room that you visit when you want to buy a car, and it's very decorated. You have a lot of beautiful cars. That's the showroom. Okay, and that's it. There is an expression, we say the show must go on, and that means the performance must continue in the theatre, but it's a metaphor for life. If you have maybe a problem with work, but you need to continue. So everything must continue. The show must go on. To get the show on the road is very famous as well. And the significance is to begin. So if you're at the meeting and you want to get the show on the road, the significance is to begin the meeting, okay? To begin the meeting, to begin the party, to begin something is to get the show on the road. Okay, so really, really possible expressions. The next one, and maybe the last phrasal verb for today, is the verb to shut. So obviously with the door, we say shut the door, which is like to close the door. So it's almost the same to close. And for a business, if you shut the business down, that's maybe the first phrasal verb. To shut down is to close maybe forever, permanently. So the business closed down last week. The business shut down. So that means the business has stopped functioning. The business maybe has gone to go bankrupt, and it is irregular because the verb is to shut, and the past simple is shut, and the participle is shut also. So it maybe sounds a little German, and maybe it originally was German. So shut the door in the present, past I shut the door, and I have shut the door is the participle. And as I said, to shut down is typical for the business or the factory to close permanently. Okay, and very, very typical. And also it's a little vulgar. To shut your mouth is very, very vulgar and a bit strong, so a bit impolite, and it's definitely possible as well. Shut the window is possible. And there is a phrasal verb to shut up, which is connected to this. It's a bit vulgar as well. It's an order when you want somebody to stop speaking, which is obviously rude. You can say to shut up, okay? But there is a possible to shut up shop means to completely close the shop, but maybe for the day. It depends on the context. It depends on the situation. But to shut up shop could mean to completely close the shop, or maybe just temporarily, or maybe just for one day, okay? In sport, you can shut out the other team, and that means you stop the other team from scoring. So to shut the other team out, or to shut out another team, is possible. So this is used in other situations, like to ignore with your friends or a group in the company. They organize the party, but they shut the other person out. They ignore the other person, or maybe they're afraid of the business connection, so they shut the person out. And that's possible as well. Shut up, shut out, shut under, no. So there's not too many phrasal verbs with shut. And here, shut off is stop from functioning. Yes. So in relation to water, in relation to electricity, the company can turn off the water, the company can switch off the water, or the company can shut off the water. So if they shut off the water, they stop the supply, they stop the flow. Okay, so to shut off the electricity is to stop the flow of the water, to stop the flow of the electricity. Okay, so it's like isolated. If you are very shut off from everybody, the significance is you are isolated from everybody as well. So that's the possibility here. And stop from functioning. And as I said, to be quiet is a bit vulgar and a bit strong. Okay, so I think that's sufficient for most of the phrasal verbs. Now I will continue with with a text from a newspaper. Okay, so this is from the BBC, and you are probably familiar with the BBC. In my opinion, it's very good for vocabulary. It's very good for quality of English, and it's very clear. And I recommend this type of reading for everybody to improve. If you're a beginner, if you're an expert, it's still really good quality and very fluent. It's very natural and it's very typical English, and it's very advanced and very, very good. So it's obviously news. It's related to the USA and Canada. And the story is, it's a ship. Okay, very dangerous situation. The ship, and the typical verb is to capsize. When the ship collapses or the ship flips or the ship turns, the specific verb we use is to capsize. So it's very specific vocabulary for the ship. When the ship turns and finishes in the water, that's to capsize. And the search for survivors from the lift vessel. So it's a story where the ship has crashed, but obviously not exactly crashed because it's different. It has capsized, so it has turned over, and they're searching for the survivors. So here you can see the picture, and it was a commercial vessel. So a vessel is a word for a ship. No big difference. Maybe vessel is a container. That's probably the difference. Operated by is the passive, because we have the extra auxiliary verb to be plus the participle operated and the word by. So it's very typical, the passive. So the active is the sea core power, operated the vessel, but the vessel was operated by. Good example of the simple passive. Okay, so I will read just a little for pronunciation, and at the same time, you can pay attention to the vocabulary, you can pay attention to the significance, and you can pay attention to the sentiment of the text as well. And then after, I will return to the explanation of the vocabulary. So here they say rescuers are searching for the missing crew members of a large commercial vessel after it capsized off the US state of Louisiana. Okay, that's the first paragraph. The second paragraph, the Coast Guard confirmed one person was found dead and 6 others had been rescued. 12 people are missing. So that's the second paragraph. Not too difficult. It's more just information, and it's more maybe fact. Okay. And then the next paragraph, the spokesman said the search team was giving it all we got, but described conditions as challenging. And then the lift boat capsized about 8 miles from Port Fourchon on Tuesday afternoon. Okay. So just to explain maybe the first part, as I said, the verb is to capsize. And that's the specific vocabulary we use in relation to the boat when it turns over. And as I said, there is another verb to flip or to turn over. And that's very specific for the ship and for the boat. And maybe you can use this as a metaphor for other situations, like the company capsized. It's understandable. It's not typical, but people will understand it. The second word is the ship. So there is a possibility of a synonym, the ship or the boat, and they are practically the same. But there is a verb to ship, and this means to transport. Okay, so if you ship the product, that means that you maybe send the product to your customer, or you send the product to the client, and that's the verb to ship. Okay, so because originally they put the product in the boat, they put the product in the ship, and they transport it. Okay, and of course the other word was just completely different. But for pronunciation, this is the classic confusion, the sheep, and that is the type of animal. So there's a completely big difference between the two. And that's the typical connection with that. Then with the verb to search, we have the typical preposition for. So you search for information, search for people, search for food. And also you can say to look for. And also there's a verb to seek, which is more advanced and very important as well. So to seek, we need no preposition. That's the big difference. You seek a job, you're seeking a house, you're seeking accommodation. It means you're looking for or searching for, but the big difference, seek, you need no preposition. Okay, that's the big difference between the three. And I think that's the best explanation for that. And we continue to the first paragraph. So here the verb is to rescue. And you can also say to save. Okay, and here we have the ending or the suffix of the ER. So that's a perfect example of the person. So normally when you have the suffix ER, it's typically a person. And here it's the people that rescue other people. So the person is a rescuer. And also here it's in plural. Because it's in plural, we need the verb to be in plural. So for example, I am, you are, he is, she is, but they, the rescuers, are searching. And this is an example of the present continuous for the missing crew. So missing means it's not in the right place. If you're looking for your keys and they are missing, you are looking for your telephone and it is missing, you cannot find, you cannot locate. And the specific vocabulary here is the crew. And the crew is the word specifically we use for the group of workers of the ship. So the crew are the workers from the ship. And maybe in the company, you say staff. So there is a big difference between staff and crew. So as I said, crew is maybe originally from the ship, but it's more flexible because you can use crew in relation to maybe your friends. It's possible to say your crew is your group of friends. Okay, and that's very, very common as well. Also, in relation to a haircut, you can have a crew cut, and the significance is a special type of haircut with maybe tight hair here, and that's very possible as well. But here, it's the specific vocabulary in relation to the ship because the workers are missing. They cannot find them, okay? Members. And then again, you have that specific verb to capsize, and it's the past because it's the past simple. And then the preposition off is in relation to the position because the state or the coast, and it's off. So the significance is away from. Also, in relation to off, you can say, I am feeling a little off today. And the significance is you're not feeling good. You're not feeling the same. You're feeling a little bad. So it's possible to say you are feeling a little off today. Maybe you can say off color, which is the same as well. You're feeling a little bad. You're not feeling the same. So it's very, very flexible. But here, it's just a location, like away from. So off the state. So it's just location and position. Again, here we have the verb to confirm, and it's regular. So it's ED, confirmed, one person. And the difference between one person and two people is very important. Was found dead. So I think this is the passive because we have the verb to be and the participle, but also dead is the adjective, and you need to be clear of the difference between the adjective and the noun and the verb. So the verb is to die, and the adjective is, as I said, dead, and the noun is death. Okay, so very, very important family of words, and people confuse this frequently. So the verb is to die, dead is the adjective, death is the noun, and then the past simple is died. So it's irregular and very important structure and very important connection of vocabulary for the word to die. Okay, here we have the difference between other, another, others had been rescued. So remember, another is typical for singular, and we normally say another day, another person, another week, another year. So typically we say another plus singular, and other is typical for the plural. So other people, other years, other days, other weeks, and that's the difference between another and other. Okay, but here, as I said, when you have a choice or an option of two things, do you want this one or do you want the other one? So it's possible to say the other. And finally, the other possibility is the others. In relation to a group of people, you can go to the event with this group, or you can go with the others. So that's very important, the difference. And here it's related to the group of people. Had been rescued is another difficult structure in relation to the passive and the active. So the verb is to rescue, and the person, for example, rescued, here we have the man, and then to create the passive, we would say the man was rescued by the person. And here it's the present perfect plus the participle. So it's a good example of the passive, but it's very advanced structure and a bit difficult. And that's the most important from that paragraph. The next paragraph is a spokesman, and that's very difficult vocabulary because the verb is obviously to speak, which is very normal and very clear, but a spoke, and in the past is I spoke, it's irregular. Okay, but we have specific vocabulary. We say a spokesman or a spokeswoman or a spokesperson, and that means the person who is responsible to give the information from the group, or the person who is responsible to communicate the information from the company. That is a spokesman or a spokeswoman or a spokesperson. It's the one person with the job or the responsibility to communicate to other people the news. Typically in business, typically for a company, you have a spokesman, and it's the person to communicate, and that's good vocabulary. And here it's the person from the ship, or the person from the company, or the person from the government, I think the Coast Guard. And here it's the past, so the verb is to say, it's irregular, said. So the search is the noun, because the verb also is to search, but here we have the noun, the search. Team is the group that are responsible for finding the other people. And again, we have I think the past continuous was giving it all we got, which means they are committed and they are dedicated and they are giving everything, but describe conditions as challenging. So typically with described, we have the preposition as. So you describe Dublin as, you describe this football team as, or you describe something as. The typical combination is to describe something as. Okay. Again, miles, the little difference between miles and kilometers is very important, and the pronunciation is key. Again, on for the preposition, on Tuesday. So for the day, we say on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and it is possible the afternoon, we say in the afternoon, okay? In the morning, in the afternoon, and for the day, we'd say on Tuesday, on Monday. So that's a little difference between the prepositions and the day and the month. So for the month, you would say in January, but for the day, we would say on. So that's the big, big difference. And here, I think it's related to the day, because it is possible as well. You can say in the afternoon, but because we have the day, I think you need to say that preposition on. The next sentence, we have a difficult verb to belong, and that's very fluent and very advanced. And I think in Espanol it's pertenecer. So, for example, this dog belongs to me, or this dog belongs to you. And as I said, in Spanish it's pertenecer. And I think in Portuguese, maybe it's very similar. And it's a very advanced verb, but the noun are the belongings. So typically, maybe in a taxi, if the person leaves their phone or the person leaves the bag in the taxi, they are the belongings of this person. So it's very good vocabulary, very fluent and very important. And here, again, identified is typical with the preposition as, and here in the previous one, described something as and identified as belonging to. The typical preposition with belong is belong to. So this dog belongs to the family. That's just very small detail and very, very important difference. Okay. Firm is a very interesting word, because firm is an adjective and it can mean very strong. And we normally say for a handshake. So a firm handshake means a very strong handshake. But also a firm is like a company. So you have a law firm, which is a law company, and that's very important vocabulary. And also the verb to firm up your plans means to, very similar to confirm, but it means to strengthen. Okay, so there is a possibility of the verb to strengthen your plans or to confirm your plans. So that is a possible phrasal verb. To firm up your plans means to make concrete and to make stronger. And yes, for a person, can be very firm in relation to discipline. So the parent is very firm with the children, and the significance is maybe very strong or very hard or very harsh. Okay, so that's very good vocabulary as well. Very harsh with the children, maybe negative. And as I said, very firm could be just very strong with the punishment or the treatment of the children. Okay, but here it's related to the company, transport firm, the transport company. So there's the explanation of a lift boat. So the definition or the explanation is a self-propelled vessel with an open deck. So this word for me is the most important, because a deck is typical. When you play poker and you play cards, you have a full deck. So the full deck is the full 52 cards. That's very typical, a full deck of cards. But originally, I think it's from the boat. So on the boat or the ship, you have the top deck. And the top deck is like planta in Espanol, but only for the ship, we say a deck. So we say all hands on deck. That's an expression. That's an instruction from the captain that the captain needs all the workers on deck to work. So he needs a lot of help. And we use this as a metaphor in lots of different situations, maybe with the family in the house. You need to say, we need all hands on deck. We need everybody to help. So that's very, very famous. But remember, the deck is in relation to the ship. Okay, so you have the top, the deck of the ship, and it's very specific in relation to ship, but also for the bus. In Dublin, we have two decks for the bus. You have the top deck and the bottom deck of the bus. And I think maybe in Spanish, again, it's planta for the bus, but we say top deck of the bus, and you can say bottom deck of the bus. And typically we say a double decker is the noun to describe the bus that has two plantas and two floors. So we would say a double decker bus. And again, the pronunciation in Ireland of the U maybe is very, very strong. So I might say a double decker bus, which is maybe very, very strong for pronunciation. And other people maybe have a different pronunciation for this. Also, there is a verb to deck someone, which is maybe informal, and the significance is boxing. So if you imagine there's a fight and two people are boxing and one person punches the other person and the other person falls, and the expression is to hit, golpear, hit the deck, okay? And that's the reason we have the verb to deck somebody is like KO, you know, when they say knockout, okay? So that's a very typical structure and very common expression, a little informal. And the opposite is, well, a synonym is to hit the deck. And maybe you can use the second expression for the situation of a hurricane. If you are in school and there's a hurricane or there's a tornado and the instruction is to hit the deck, that means everybody needs to go to the floor and to take cover and to protect yourself. There is another expression, not playing with the full deck. And this is a metaphor in relation to the cards or poker, because you have 52 cards in poker. But this is a metaphor. If you do not have the full deck, it's not possible to function correctly. But this is an insult to a person. You could say he or she is not playing with the full deck. So they are not completely intelligent. They're maybe a little stupid, which is very strong insult. So be careful with that expression. And of course, we have a lot more expression. We say a few screws loose, which is a very, very quite strong insult as well, because a screw, I think, is tornillo in Espanol when you have the machine and you have a screw. So it's a metaphor for the head when the function is not really intelligent, they are missing. Or suelto is loose because apretado, I think, is tight. And if the screws are loose like this, it's not functioning correctly. So that's very, very famous informal expression, like a little insult. And as I said, not playing with the full deck is the same as well. Okay, so they are probably the most typical expressions with deck. We have a lot, but originally it's from the ship. And here it's the open deck. on the ship. So the significance is there's no cover, there's no roof, it's just open deck, okay? Using legs and jacks. So this is very specific vocabulary, but we use it for a car. Okay, so to jack the car up is very, so we say a car jack is the object when you go to the mechanic and the mechanic needs to lift the car, the object that he needs to push, this is the jack. Okay, so there is a verb to jack up, which means to lift up, very specific originally from the mechanical situation. And here, the jack is this type of object. So very, very specific. But as I said, it could be used metaphorically in other situations. For example, the table, jack up the table for 2 minutes, and the significance is to lift. It's not typical, but it is a possibility. And this is the reason you need to be exposed to a lot of vocabulary when you're learning English, okay? Also, it's possible a verb to jack the job in, and the significance is to quit. Okay, so if you quit the job, the significance is to jack the job in, and probably it's connected to the original significance when you lift the car, but to jack your job is to lift the job and to throw away. So that's very, very informal, but very famous. And that's very, very typical, to jack your job in. And I think they're the most typical. And finally, we have the verb to drill and the verb to deploy. Okay, so to deploy is typical in the military. So the organization of the military, the manager, the colonel, the lieutenant deploys the soldiers to this area. It's like to send or to designate, but to send with responsibility or to send with a job. So if you work with a company and the company deploy you in Ireland, the company deploy you in England, they position you in this location because they want you to work here, and it's related to employ. So you can see the connection with work. So probably Latin, it's connected to work. So deploy is to send somebody to a different place to work. And here it's a little creative, but the significance is used or sent to function to support drilling. Okay, so the verb is to drill, and the noun is a drill, and it's the typical object, the tool, herramienta, to make a hole in the wall. You have to drill, and that's quite specific, but maybe you can use it as a metaphor for a headache. If you have a drilling headache, it's like very, very intense headache. So maybe you can say a drilling headache. Also in the military, you have a military drill, which is a little different, and it's for exercise or for training. So if you have a military drill, it's something that you do like an exercise that is very disciplined. Also in sport, you need to try this drill, and the significance is an exercise. So there's two different significances. The first significance is the tool. When you have the construction, you drill a hole. And the second significance is for the military or for sport, it's the same as an exercise, okay? And yeah, I suppose that's the most typical use of the verb to drill. And here we have drilling or exploration. Okay, so that's just a little analysis of a text. As I said at the beginning, we had an introduction for the grammar. We continued with the list of the phrasal verbs, and now we have just finished a small analysis of a little text. If you want, you can continue this article, and I will send you the link on the Facebook page, and you can maybe read the rest. But for me, it's very clear. It's quite simple, and it's excellent at the same time. So I always recommend this website because the vocabulary is very good. It's very natural, and it's quite advanced as well at the same time. Okay, so I recommend that, and you can read that if you want. Okay, remember, on social media, if you want to connect on social media, you are welcome to join on Instagram. You're welcome to join on Twitter, and you're welcome to join on YouTube as well. And they are all the names. Also, as I have said, the classes in the morning are possible at 9 o'clock. Some of you are aware. It's a speaking session, and we choose different topics, and it's interesting for vocabulary and for correction. That is the plan every morning at 9 o'clock. There's a small fee of €1, but it's very interesting and maybe beneficial for everybody. Today at 4 o'clock, we have another webinar, another class in relation to advanced English. So at 4 o'clock, we have a few people who regularly attend, and you are welcome. It's open for everybody, and we will look at specific exercises from the advanced exam. So that's the plan for today at 4 o'clock, and every day we have specific classes and specific webinars with different topics. Okay, so that is today. Also, remember, this is free. So the class at 11:15 is completely free. It's a good opportunity for you, hopefully, to learn. And for me, it's a very good opportunity to grow online and maybe to contact and to reach people that might like the classes and that might learn a little from the class. So that's really my intention, to grow online and hopefully to reach people who need the classes and who would like to learn English for free. That's really the plan. And if you want to support me, if you want to make a small donation or a small contribution of maybe €1 in Europe or €2, or maybe different currencies in different parts of the world, the best way to transfer is probably directly by bank. You can see the information here. It's the IBAN and the BIC, and that's probably the best way. The second possibility, if you want to contribute, is with the application Revolut, and only the telephone number is needed. And the third possibility is with Bizum. So they are all the possibilities if you want to donate and if you want to say thank you and if you want to make a small donation. Thank you to everybody already who has supported me and who has made a small donation. It makes a big help, and hopefully I can continue working in this way. Of course, there will be little adjustments and little changes, but I think it's a good idea to try and give the free classes as much as possible when I can. Okay, and PayPal is a final possibility, but usually there's a little commission for PayPal. So that's the most important information for today. And as I said, the notes, I will put the notes of the class on the Facebook page. And now we are coming to the end of the Zoom call, and I will upload the class onto Facebook, and I will upload the class onto YouTube as well. And hopefully the connection was okay for everybody. And I just see the comment there. So thank you very much. You're very, very welcome. And I appreciate you attending on Zoom. Sometimes it's difficult to work from home. Sometimes we have people close and it's difficult to give the class. But obviously because of the situation, everybody's in the same boat. That's an expression. Everyone's in the same boat, and we continue when we can. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, and thank you for your comments as well. You're very, very welcome, and enjoy the rest of the day, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.